Yo. Aubrey Edwards, Tony Schiavone. We bout to party. We bout to party. Unrestricted. Got the house now. We gon' turn it up.
Hey everybody, this is AEW Unrestricted, the official podcast of All Elite Wrestling. I am Aubrey Edwards, otherwise known as the David Brenner of AEW. We'll get into that a little bit.
In addition to being a variety of other names, Aubrey, but they're all good. They're all good.
They're all
Yes,
good. We'll get into that today. I'm very excited about this guest. First off, thank you again, Alex Abrahantes, for being here today.
Anytime.
As our guest co-host. There is a running theory that Tony Schiavone, while he's busy and typically can't make podcast recording times, that he found out we had RJ City on today and intentionally decided he wasn't going to be here. So welcome to the show.
True.
RJ
I heard
City.
it too, but I just wasn't going to bring it up.
Yeah, no. I'll take the heat for it. I want to lay it out. I've had a conspiracy in my mind for about, I would say 3 or 4 months now.
Ooh.
That Tony Schiavone has heat with me. And I want to clarify, it's nothing that Tony has ever done. I did an interview, a AEW interview with Jade Cargill. And one of my questions was, why are Tony Schiavone's shit so big?
I remember that.
And that was it was a thing on the show. And then when the episode came out, somebody wrote, "Oh, what was Tony Schiavone's reaction?" And I thought, well, I don't know, because I don't work with him. I see him maybe in the hall once a month, and that's it. And then I got it in my head that he saw it and hated it and has been avoiding me. So every interaction I've had with him since, I've colored it in my head. That meanwhile, who knows if he's even seen it, and then I thought, should I have cleared it with him? I have no idea. So I came on here for the podcast and I thought I would be getting the Aubrey Schiavone experience, and then no Tony, conveniently missing. And then so I likened it to when Johnny Carson would take off and David Brenner would co-host, and they would have guests on that Johnny didn't personally like.
Okay, that's a fair theory.
Yeah,
that is a fair theory.
It is a fair theory. Very, very fair. Where was I going to go with this? Oh my God. So you've got heat with Tony Schiavone. You actually have heat.
I don't
with
have
me now
heat.
too.
Okay, why? Please go ahead.
Oh,
okay.
This is good. Breaking
here's
news.
Here's the thing. So there is a Italian tradition that, and I learned this when I married into an Italian family, that when you eat your meal, whatever, you've got your appetizers, your sides, your main course, all that. And at the end of the meal, there is a salad. And every time I'm at my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law's like, you have to eat your salad. I'm like, no, Gina, nobody wants to eat the fucking salad. We wanted to fill up on lasagna and all this delicious stuff. I don't want to eat a salad. I don't need a palate cleanser. I want to remain have lasagna on my palate still. So I was discussing this with RJ in catering as he's eating this fruit. I'm like, why are you eating all the fruit? You just had this wonderful thing. And he's like, oh, it's a palate cleanser. I'm like, no, we don't do that here. You have the fruit first. Enjoy it. What is the problem? So I've just decided that we have heat because of
Alex, listen to those exclusionary words. We don't do that here.
Wait a second. But I'm so confused. A salad is so completely different than fruit. Fruit could be considered a dessert, could it not?
It could, but the way he had it assembled, it could be believed to be a fruit salad.
Yeah. I was taught the fruit is maybe a digestive. First of all, fruit is not good to have on an empty stomach because it's so acidic.
Wow.
Right? Not that good for you. It's not to agree or disagree that it's biological. It's not an opinion piece here. But I had that fruit salad. AEW does wonderful job on the fruit spread, and I think it goes often unused. People load up on the lasagnas and the sweet potato fries and the what have you. And I wanted to lend some credence to the fruit department. So I was actively enjoying a bowl of fruit. Really.
That was very kind of you.
It was kind of me. And, you hold it up to the chef and you give them a little nod hey, some fruit.
Tell Sabrina, hey, killing it with the fruit.
And Aubrey just could not stand to be seated next to me while I was doing this.
Wow, the things you learn here at Unrestricted. I mean, my goodness.
Breaking news. Breaking news. Oh, my God. All right. Well, I don't know. Do you have heat with Alex, RJ? I feel like you have to.
I don't. I actually enjoy Alex a lot. And I binged a few of his videos, including
That's right.
how to burn a CD. It
yes, I'm
popped up,
famous for that.
yeah, on my algorithm, and I thought, wow, let's click on this. And it's so funny to hear Alex's, wrestling fans aren't listening to this voice. You know what I mean? Like a real professional human being. And I'm like, wow.
Well, thank you.
As opposed to now.
Voice.
Yes. And then the next thing I know, 40 minutes have gone by. And I'm just deep into this informative world.
But did you learn how to burn a CD?
I did. I'll never apply that knowledge, but I learned
No, of course not.
2023. I think that knowledge is a little dated now, but it's still important to know.
You'd be surprised.
Understand the history. I mean, if I had to burn one today, I'd be screwed. I don't even think I have a CD-ROM drive. So I don't know if half our roster even knows what a CD-ROM drive is.
I love how you're talking about useful YouTube videos to a person who often sits through PBS station identification supercuts.
Oh my God.
They're
so
relaxing. Wow. Alex is very relaxing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Soothing. Some people listen to ASMR videos. Some people listen to Alex Abrante.
Yes.
Maybe I should combine both.
Oh my God. I would listen. I would listen to the old computer start up with that hot air.
Or the Intel logo.
Yes. Is this about me? Do you have any questions about me?
You know what? We do have some questions about you. Jeez, we should probably get into that.
Tony gets back when?
As soon as you sign off, that's when Tony gets back. All right, let's actually do a proper introduction. RJ City,
let's do it.
Wonderful human being. He's the host of Hey EW, which new episodes come out at the crack of dawn every Sunday morning, and they're absolutely hysterical and wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're actually a year in at this point. Your first one was on March 13th with Danhausen.
Yes.
As a first guest. Great first guest to break on the internet with. It's like, oh God, what is this? I've got RJ City and Danhausen coming in my Instagram feed. I got to look into this. So how did this all start? Was that the first thing that you were brought into AEW to do, or was there something else?
Well, I had been working at WWE for like a year and a half, doing a variety of things. And then the system was such that 80% of the stuff we would attempt to do would never happen. So it was very frustrating. I'm happy with what I did, but, there was always more I wanted to do. And then, to put it politely, a big tide came in and wiped everything away. And then I got really, disenchanted. And I was like, you know what? I did this. That was WWE stuff. And let's just move on. I was working on a couple different TV things. I was maybe going to do some weird things on the indies. Aubrey, I know you're familiar with Babyface.
Yes.
So I thought, let's do that. Like the pandemic was still going on and it was slowly ending. And then I tweeted about something related to one of those pictures that never made it. And next thing I know, Tony Khan, not Schiavone, slid into my DMs and said, you're not with WWE? I said, no. He said, well, do you want to come do this? And do you want to come do sit down interviews? And
I think it was the Road to, wasn't it?
Yes, it was the Road to, where I was the chauffeur on the Road to Revolution. And he had known of my work. I don't understand how he knew it, but he also has an excellent comedy brain. Like how much he knows about wrestling, it feels like it's applied to like every kind of corner of the life and the world. He has this comedy brain. He knew exactly kind of what he wanted from me. And then it was like, oh, okay, great. So it was, and then he was like, great, you'll hear from, whoever it was, Kevin Sullivan, who's,
great guy,
edits everything, puts it all together. And then 3 weeks went by and I didn't hear anything. So again, my neurosis said, I've done something that's upset these people. Maybe Tony Schiavone has said, no, not this guy. And then
he knew back then.
That's why you have heat.
He has a good sense. And then next thing I know, we're at Revolution. Before it, we're at Dark. I'm sitting in an SUV in a chauffeur hat and a crew. And I'm going, no one's going to want to do this. This is not going to go well. And then Paul White relented and sat in the car and we had a nice time. And then that was that.
So how did this kind of concept come about? Is this something that you pitched? Is this something that TK was like, hey, I had this great idea. Why don't you do this? Like, what was the kind of evolution of that?
I had pitched it, being the chauffeur on the road to, you got to have the road to choose and everything. And then I wrote out an outline of what it could look like and what sample questions were, and then what a sit-down interview would be. And then I wrote an interview for Tony because I thought, well, if, he's approving of everything, if he's okay with the ones about him, then nobody else can say anything. So I sent him that, and he approved it. And then when we actually went to do our interview months later, I said, did you look at your questions? And he said, nope. No, he had absolutely no idea what I was going to ask, as most people don't. Nobody knows what I'm going to ask them, which is great.
I'm curious where the name of the show came from, the Hey EW, because I remember seeing the sign, and I'm like, hey, ew. Like,
I did too.
Well,
what is this?
You have a habit of, like, when you're brainstorming ideas, you don't worry about what's good or not. You're like, let's just get it out and on paper. So I made a list of really stupid names. And the first one was Hey EW. And here's a list of 10 names, and I sent them to Kevin Sullivan, and we had this big call, and I remember him saying, and I think everybody agrees the name of the show should be Hey EW. And I'm like, really? Are you guys sure about this? And then, I wanted the sign to look like I had drew it with a marker, and then that's exactly what they did. And then it looked like Hey Ooh, which none of us realized until we saw the logo. And that's a good way to tell if people have actually watched the show or not. When people go, hey, I love Hey Ooh, and I go, you're full of shit, because that's not the name of the show. I say the name of the show at the beginning of every episode because I understand there's going to be some confusion. But then it was Kevin's sick idea to just say Sunday mornings at the crack of dawn and never specify, I guess, treat everybody like they're farmers and never let them know when exactly that is. But that's the charm of a show that kind of should not be happening.
Well, I mean, listen, you've been around a long time, so obviously you came into AEW knowing quite a few people here, one of which is Sanjay Dutt, and I know he's been a big fan of yours, an advocate. Where did you meet Sanjay, and kind of where did this relationship begin?
I'm going to get very emotional. He sent me, one day he sent me a DM when I was on the indies, just plugging along. I had not known him. I'd never met him. And he said, hey, it was either Colt or, maybe it said, hey, I saw your promos. Somebody sent me your promo and I loved it. And I just wanted to say, like, keep up the good work. And you're like, oh, my, thank God. I appreciate that, especially when it gets very depressing on the indies. Those genuine compliments from people you admire are what you cling to. You know what I mean? Sure. And you're like, this will keep me going for at least another week. And I always appreciated that. And then after that, he tried to get me to work in like 3 different places. And for whatever reason, like I was always doing a lot of TV stuff too. So every time he would ask, I couldn't do it or I couldn't come. But we would always, enjoyed each other. And I certainly enjoyed his work. And then finally, we got to do this together. This was the first thing. And I think we both felt like, oh, this was worth the wait. It's significant enough, but also stupid enough.
Yeah.
In
I feel like
way,
everyone's jaded enough that it works.
Yeah, I think so. And people are allowed to I leave the guest space to do what they want with the information I give. It's also like Jeremy, Giancarlo, Zane, Dan, George, Dennis, they all do that's the crew. And they do a tremendous job in making stuff look bad. I can't tell you how hard, but it's seriously like I've had that problem before when I say I need something to look bad and people don't understand because like cameras are so nice, like technology is so good now that it's hard to make stuff look genuinely bad. And, if you want to know how talented they are, they also do a lot of the promo packages and the backstage promos and the vignettes, and those look fantastic. So it's one thing to be great, but to be so good that you can undo your own greatness when it's asked for is just fantastic.
That's a gift.
I'm glad that you called out all of them because our production guys backstage do an incredible amount of work and don't get the love and recognition that they deserve. Like they're there first in the building. They're typically there super late night editing stuff constantly. Like they're waiting around for talent to show up so they can actually record a promo for whatever the hell it is they need. Like they're They're killing it. Yeah.
They also have to deal with me emotionally because I get very vulnerable doing
I've heard
stuff.
about that.
Okay. Have people said this?
There was one moment we were filming. I'm going to throw somebody under the bus. We were filming the Heels podcast where we had like me and Vicky and Leva and Amanda.
Yes.
And we didn't have the backdrop, so we needed like just color splash on the wall. And someone put the blue and they went, "Oh, we can't do that. That's AEW. We will get an essay from RJ if we use this color."
Yes.
So we switched to purple on a whim because we're like, oh, nobody wants heat with him.
Yeah, it was a very specific. I went out of my way to try to make the show unique looking in the sense that you're not going to see it anywhere else on AEW stuff. So yeah, no, I wouldn't have been upset. But usually what happens is after we film stuff, I hate it. That's just my emotional roller coaster is whatever. And
I think
Jeremy,
that's artists in general, though.
Yeah,
right?
Totally. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it is.
I mean, I think Jay Lethal came up to me once right after he finished and he's like, "So how'd you like it?" And I was like, "Listen, you can't ask me that because I'm going to complain about trivial stuff that you didn't even realize the room was too big." The last couple episodes, I complained that the room was too big.
I was there for that.
Right? And I was just like, this is not...
But you weren't wrong.
I'm not wrong. No, I'm not wrong at all. It's just annoying to listen to. But then after I finish, you know, Jeremy will I'll come up to him and say, like, was that okay? Was that anything? And I never really know because everything is, generally speaking, one take. And we barely edit anything. So I get in this weird zone where I almost don't remember what I did right after we did it.
Yeah, that's completely
so
fair.
Great. And I know that there's so much more to talk about. I mean, we casually threw in a little bit of like you doing indie stuff. There's all the work you do at AEW. The pre-show at Revolution itself was just an absolutely incredible thing. There's so much more to talk about, and we've got it coming up here on AEW Unrestricted.
It's Alex and Aubrey back here at Unrestricted with the ever-talented RJ City. We've talked about so much, RJ, but let's bring it back a little bit. Bring it back a little bit. Yeah. Well, we learned about his enjoyment of fruit at catering and how that's acceptable. We learned that.
I think this is really going to hook people and help promote.
I think we're going to try it.
Yeah.
Yeah. This week at catering, I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah. They're not going to have enough fruit now, and that's going to be the problem.
Yeah, we're going to have a fruit shortage. Yeah. It's all your fault. So let's back up a little bit, RJ, and talk about how you got into the business. A lot of folks may not know that you were a wrestler, or are you still a wrestler? We've got to ask you that question as well. So give us a little bit of background about how you got into wrestling.
I never remember not wanting to get into wrestling ever. It was this and the Muppet Show, and they're the same thing, which is a point I've made a million times because it is also true. And then in Ontario, there was a commission, so I could not start training until I was 18. It was a whole thing. And I remember I found a guy in Maryland where my uncle lived named John Rambo, who was trained by like the Samoans. And he let me roll around, which was hilarious.
I worked for Rambo. He was down in like Virginia?
Yes. In that
Holy
Maryland.
cow, what a small world.
What a strange time. I think Max Caster wrestled for him once too. We should have a John Rambo tribute podcast. Not that he's dead, but still. And then when I got to Toronto when I was of age, I started training with a guy named Ruffy Silverstein, who was trained by the Hearts, and he was in like the original Team Canada. And then, that was it. I started wrestling. And do I still wrestle? Yes. I never stopped. There is an argument that maybe I don't even wrestle when I actually wrestle. I think my last match was in December. Listen, if somebody wants to pay me enough, sure. But I'm having a lot more fun and success not wrestling in wrestling, which probably tells you how good my wrestling was.
I don't think it's necessarily how good your wrestling was. I think it's part of it, like how much your character connected with the audience that people wanted to see more of you.
Right.
It's not just necessarily in the ring, right?
Yes. And also some of my ideas were a little too outside the box where they became difficult to work into on a wrestling show without upending the entire show. Like treating my entrance like it was a sitcom audience warm-up thing and making the fans do it over and over again. I thought that was really, really funny.
That's great.
Having a script for the match and halfway through the match say you're not following this script here. Really concept breaking stuff which, you know, for me is fine, but I understand how it won't work for everyone. So I ended up being very much a in my own sandbox type of thing, which is great. It's totally fine. I understand it, and I'm not upset about it.
So there's a...
Go ahead.
Keep going. Sorry.
No, please. I insist.
I was going to say we actually have fan questions later, but there's one now that kind of fits nicely from Jeff Minaglia. You chose Leslie Gore's "You Don't Own Me" as your theme for the Indies.
Yes.
What was your reasoning behind that?
Well, I had always been a fan of the song because it was featured so prominently in the First Wives Club. I remember watching that as a kid and being so empowered by it, even though I was not the target demo at all. And then I started listening to it, and I was very big on, like, there's so much wrestling. You know, there's so many wrestlers, there's so many shows, there's so much going on. I always wanted to find what hasn't been done, and let's just try that for the sake of experimentation. And that was a song that I had not heard yet in wrestling. And it was great. It had a very distinct sound. It felt very me. I would come out to a Leslie Gore song, you know, and then it felt really nice to come out to. But I also, you know, being in my own sandbox, as hard as it is, it also built up a lot of trust that I can handle my own thing. And, you know, for good or for bad, AEW content-wise is up to me. All the notes are mine. No one looks at them. No one gives me any. I just remember, you know, the 4th episode maybe is Eddie Kingston. And to be uncouth, I made a fisting joke. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to get a phone call. And that's it. I'm prepared to take the heat. Like, let me find the boundaries of these people. And it went out undetected. Not even undetected, but I guess it was okay. And I was like, all right. Fine. We've since mentioned, like, I don't know, Robert Blake and Genghis Khan, and not that it's the goal to do that, but it's nice to have the freedom to, if I deem it necessary.
Now, where did this necessary?
Yeah.
Where did this fascination of kind of old school Hollywood kind of come about?
I blame my grandmother. She would say, "You need to watch The Nutty Professor. You need to watch Abbott and Costello." And I would watch it as a kid and assume everyone else had watched it too. Why wouldn't they? You know? And then, you know, none of my friends would have seen it. Then I end up talking to their parents and grandparents. And then it came out of that. And it is also a world that does not seem to exist anymore. They're very mystical, like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster, in the sense that, you know, movies and TV, it was so mysterious. Now everyone does it, and you have a phone, and we can all do the exact same thing. But back then, it was like, ooh, Don Knotts. Like, what does he do all day? So that's always like a point of curiosity.
What's he tweeting?
Yes.
What's old is new again. I love it. It's really, really great.
My other thing is also I've learned that being timely doesn't always work. That's like the best way to come off dated. Is if, like, usually we film 4 episodes in a row, so we'll have stuff that won't come out until a month later. And if I make a joke about something that just happened, then it feels really old when it comes out. But Don Knotts will always be old, whether it's now or a month later. So that seems to work in my favor, too.
It does work. I like that. One of the things I want to talk about, because I absolutely loved this documentary, the You Cannot Kill David Arquette. Oof. And you had a big role off screen and on the screen. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, there is no embargo on it. I was set up. David's old writing partner was a fan of mine in Toronto. He would go to the indie shows, and David was looking to get back into wrestling, and Ben is his name, said, you got to talk to RJ. So I followed him on Twitter. And then it turned into this whole thing. And I was brought in to just kind of be a consultant and kind of help him with maybe his gimmick, which he didn't have and still doesn't have. And then they all said, no, I think you should, wrestle me. I think this should be the first match. And I was like, okay, great. That worked. And then the documentary is frustrating for me to watch because they filmed for like 2 years. So you can't capture everything. And I don't think people can appreciate how much he did when the cameras weren't there. Like, he would just go to indie shows, and we would team together after we wrestled. We were this odd couple tag team, and he would show up, and I'd say, "Where's the crew?" And he says, "No crew. I wanted to wrestle." He was obsessed with, earning the respect of these people. Wrong business to look for respect, but that's a story for another day. And he was just so good to everybody, and he would give so much stuff away for free and always try to pay for dinner for the boys, and just really aggressively nice. And he's still doing well. He's still alive.
Thank goodness for that. Yeah, you can't. As the documentary says. Where can you see the documentary, by the way?
That's a great question. I think you can buy it on YouTube. I usually, wherever documentaries are, I don't know the logistics of it, but maybe
I watched it on a plane. I think it's on Netflix or something.
Look, just buy a ticket for a plane. Give yourself maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, and you should be able to see it.
That's good to know. That's fantastic. So I got to ask you about this. RJ makes coffee in his underwear. How did this come about? And how did you get Steve Austin on it?
Well, it came about because I was not doing anything. I was very dejected with what was going on, or the lack of what was going on. There was another wrestling company that had offered me a contract, and we were way too far apart, so I declined it. And I thought, is that all there is? And then I thought, well, whatever, I'm just going to do my own stuff. Everyone was streaming and doing dumb stuff anyway. So I tweeted out that I was going to stream me making coffee in my underwear. And Tommy Dreamer commented on it and said, you might as well. Everyone's doing, stupid stuff anyway. Why not? And I said, okay, I'm just going to do one. And I've since been doing it for the past 4 years, and it sounds more sexual than it is. There's the hook of it being in my underwear is like, whatever. It sounds like one thing, but then within minutes, we're talking about the Bosnian War or something. And we've totally veered off. And then, I started having guests on as people, enjoyed doing that kind of thing too. And the way I got Steve Austin was me and David did his podcast, which has since been removed from the internet. So it's now this lost podcast. I guess he had to take his stuff off for whatever. I'm not going to get into his legal issues or whatever. But it's a shame because we brought him a cherry pie. And at the end of it, we sat around talking for an hour. We had a really good time. And I said, look, I'm going to ask you to do something. And if you don't want to do it, feel free to tell me to go fuck myself. And he said, and he knew what I wanted to do. And he said, okay, let's do it. And I believe I'm the only show in history to have both Steve Austin and Mario Cantone as guests.
What a combination.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is quite the bullet point, sir.
Very proud of that distinction.
Oh, I love it. I want to go back to AEW a little bit and talk more about kind of how, because you have so much freedom and you've sort of mentioned that at this point, you don't let the guests know at all what they're getting asked about, right?
If they want to, I mean, I guess, sure. Some people have asked or said but more often than not, and I always admire the guest because without them trust falling into it, none of it would be possible. Most people don't have any. I always ask them, like, is there anything? Are you good or whatever? And I would say certainly there are some personal areas that I try to clear with people, but more often than not, people trust that even if I go into those areas, I do it the right way, I guess. They know I'm not necessarily out to get them. And then they also have the freedom. I'm not telling them to say anything either. So if they didn't like it and they wanted to call me out for not liking it, I don't think I'd mind.
Is filming the show different now that it's been out for a year and people are sort of familiar with it? Because I know early on the concept would be very much like, I have no idea what I'm doing and something's going to happen. But now everyone knows, like when they see you around and you're filming AEW, it's like, oh, okay, we kind of get an idea of what it is.
Well, my first guests that I had were people like Danhausen, who obviously we worked together a bunch before this, and Eddie Kingston and Mark Henry. They all knew my stuff. So then, like, that was easy. You want to get the people who are most familiar with you. But then I had somebody, and it would have been great if he was here, Tony Schiavone, who I had never worked with before, But then he was also perfect Like, it's great to see how talented people are outside of the norm. Like, they're good at the wrestling stuff, but then you don't realize how funny they are or how smart they are, how quick they are. Arn Anderson is another example. So that is a guy
that was great.
who, is just a business-minded person who wants to help. And if you ask me to do something, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. So he said yes. And then allegedly, because I'd never spoken to him before, he saw Mark Henry right before he went out to come in to do it. And he said, what is this YouTube shit thing I have to do? And then Mark was sweet enough to say, you're going to enjoy yourself, just have a nice time. And then he came in and shook my hand and sat down. And like, what you see is just exactly what happened. And then he was like, well, that was nice. And then got up and left. And just like this like magic moment of this guy, and it is nice because I wouldn't be able to, I can't wrestle Arn Anderson. You know what I mean? But now we get to have this like unique moment together. I don't know how he feels about it. He probably just totally put it out of his head. I'm sure Jim Ross has. I would like to, next time you get Jim Ross on, just please ask him how he enjoyed himself. But then there are other people who come on, with ideas. What if I do this? And what if we do that? And like, I certainly don't want to, as much as it is a playground for me, it's a playground for them too. We're going to go away and do some business with America, and we'll be right back after this.
Perfect. This is AEW Unrestricted, and I can't throw to commercial the same way that RJ City does, so I might as well just retire now.
Can. Yep.
I don't think anybody can. We've got Aubrey and Alex here having a wonderful conversation with RJ, just talking about all of his wonderful projects at AEW, kind of his influences, stuff he's done outside of AEW, a little bit of wrestling thrown in there because, we are a wrestling company.
Isn't there enough wrestling going on?
There is enough wrestling. We're on every night of the week. Let's watch.
Some people always ask, like, when are you going to wrestle for AEW? And I'm like, do they not have enough of the best wrestlers in the world?
Like 200 people. Like,
what do you think I'm going to add to this? They have these like amazing matches every single week. And what am I going to just poke my head in? Are you out of your mind? Leave me alone. Save me the embarrassment.
Oh my God. And on top of that, like, if you're not bumping, you can do whatever it is you're doing for longer. So.
Well, I don't bump no matter what. But I do. It is a point of pride to hear. And the joke is that AEW is a wife show. Because I've always heard my wife hates wrestling, but she loves AEW. And that's, my goal, where it's like, you've got all the great wrestling stuff covered. Let's do something totally different. And if we can grab other people too and be a weird gateway, for people who might, I always think wrestling can be framed in a better, smarter way because it is fantastic. You know what I mean?
It's wonderful.
Yeah. There's niches in every facet of the world that you can kind of bring in. So that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
Small goal.
I love it. We got a lot of fan questions because you're quite popular on the internet. I don't know if you knew this or not.
Yeah, on the internet.
On the internet. We have a question from Emmanuel Alejandro. What are the numerous celebrity influences that make up RJ City?
Oh my God, so much. High atop the list is Jerry Lewis. Not only on camera, but the person. What an asshole he was. What a difficult, inappropriate person. And I just am constantly fascinated by him. Van Johnson, which is a very old one, for the same reason. SCTV, Billy Crystal, Christopher Guest, all that stuff. But I also, especially when I'm doing these interviews, I like to go straight to the source of bad interviews. There's Lita Powell Drake. If you've ever seen, she's wearing a tracksuit and she's like hitting on Gene Hackman. You may have seen this, the popular clip. There's her. There's Skippy Lowe, who's a horrible interviewer. There was a guy named Tom Labrie who had a waterbed company, and he had a late night talk show where he had and he's not an equipped interviewer. And I just am fascinated by these people. So I'm a sick YouTube wormhole. These are painful things, but yet I enjoy them so much.
Oh my God.
So I've got a good one here from AM Buxa. I believe I pronounced that correctly. So what's your favorite thing about working at AEW, and why is it Renee Paquette?
Oh, wow. It really does bother me because I've been here over a year now. Where is my graphic? You know, what are we doing? Renee waltzes in. They had the graphic before she walked in the door. What seniority system is going on here? What backroom deals was she making?
Perhaps Schiavone had something to do with it. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, I know. They're giving these graphics away like they're candy. I've been turning it out every week. What's going on? I will have Tony Khan back on AEW, and I absolutely plan on asking him this question.
Oh, you should start with that.
Yes. He was like, I want to come back on. I was like, great. And then I just now have a list of grievances, which he'll have to address. But no, you know, don't be fooled. As nice as Renee is on camera, she's very cunning behind the scenes.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
I know you did a New Year's episode of AEW with Paul White where you're in the bed and whatnot. I feel like the next Tony Khan one, you have a Festivus episode where you have your poll and your airing of grievances.
Yes, I would love that. And I would love to do it in April or something, you know?
It's just Festivus all year round. There we go.
Yes, I have grievances no season.
That's right. They're all year long.
Right, exactly. It's like the people that leave their Christmas decorations up all year round. It's like, good, do it. Let's do that with every holiday.
You know, my own personal hell is no matter how much I don't like Renee, people like seeing us together. So my understanding
you do have
is that
chemistry.
Yeah,
it works.
You're
like
maybe
peanut butter and jelly.
It's the friction. But if peanut butter and jelly hated each other, you know,
okay,
yeah,
I like that.
Yeah.
All right, very interesting question from Patrick. If RJ City was tasked with putting together a faction based on Frasier, which wrestlers would he choose?
Why would I choose wrestlers where I could pick BB Newirth and David Hyde Pierce? Who would I pick? Frasier. Who's intellectual? Who likes talking about psychology? Maybe a Bryan Danielson.
Oh, yeah.
Him being from Seattle. Right? I think that would be a good start. And then maybe complexion-wise, I'd go with Saraya. I think to capture the BB Newirth-ishness, I'd have to coach her a little. It would be like a My Fair Lady kind of thing. But I think we could get there.
It could work.
Then I think it would be a good idea to have, ornery Arn Anderson sitting in the recliner.
Oh,
with his Glock?
Yeah, sure.
In hand, of course.
Yeah.
So let's move on here because National Scissoring Day has a great question here. If you were allowed one co-host of AEW, who would it be?
Oh, wow. One co-host would probably... This is a wonderful question. I have a dear friend named Nug Nargang, and he's a comedian in Toronto. He's the reason that me and Renee even know each other, because he used to host a wrestling show with Renee. And he's the person I most often look to tell me if something is good. So I would say him.
That's pretty cool.
You know what? Actually, never mind. Ellen Green. She played Audrey in Little Shop of Horrors. Yeah.
I like it. I like it. Maybe flip a coin, see who's available.
Yes.
We could do both. We have a question
I maybe put out feelers once to date her because I knew people who knew her, and I was told she's not your type. Don't bother.
Maybe you're not her type.
Who knows? I don't think they sent her my Instagram or anything.
They're just like, no, dude, we're not even gonna. Whatever.
No, we don't want this circus.
Not my circus, not my monkeys. We have a question from Werschneffner.
Of course you do. Misty Schneffner.
Schneffner. How many HR complaints did you file over your personal space being violated during the Revolution pre-show?
So the Revolution pre-show was very weird. It was like a live rehearsal for everybody. We had not done something like that before, and it was
excellent.
Thank you. I think the next one will be better. It was hard because, I'm in my ear. I can also hear myself in the mic, but then I hear myself coming through the arena echo too, because we're right backstage. And then it was hard to hear the person next to me, and it was hard for them to hear me. So we had to be unusually close to each other. But, I mean, when it's someone like a Daddy Magic or a Will Hobbs or an Adam Cole, who, again, I will say smells great, you don't mind being that close.
Well, that's always good to know. Let's go back to a question about your Canadian roots here, because Wrestling Rob has a good one. You send one Canadian snack to a random person. What do you send?
Ooh. Canadian snacks are just like appropriated British snacks, really. I'm trying to think of what's uniquely Canadian. Poutine is horrendous. Beaver tails are horrendous. I would send them Orbits. Orbits was do you remember this? One of you must. Aubrey, they were gelatin balls floating in soda.
Yeah. It was gross.
It was like an early bubble tea. And it was supposed to be a big hit, and it was such a flop that it sunk the company that put them out. Yeah, but if I see that, I'm immediately taken back to like 1995. So that's what I would send people.
I thought you'd go all dressed chips.
It's a lot on the mouth. There's too much salt. It like burns my lips. You have to be ready for it.
You do have to be ready, but it's delicious.
It is.
I've learned that Canada has an assortment of flavors of Kit Kat that are not available in America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's like a tiramisu. There's a cheesecake. There's caramel. It's wacky. All right.
Isn't it some stuff? Don't you just want tiramisu? Like, have a Kit Kat and have like. Why am I longing for a tiramisu? Yeah, have the thing that you want.
Have the thing. All right. So we've got a couple rapid fire questions.
Ooh.
I don't want you to think about it. I want you to just answer.
Okay.
All right. Daniel Ruiz, rank the Golden Girls from best to worst.
Okay. Dorothy. I don't think that's hard. Then Blanche. Then we would go Sophia. I would actually put Stan Zbornak before Rose, because I don't like Rose that much at all. And neither did Bjork.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Next question. Mayor of Canton asks, Thousand Island dressing. Which Thousand Islands does it represent?
The Thousand Islands that are in upstate New York. I suggest that person get a map. Next question.
Next question from David Williams. Best sci-fi sitcom, Out of This World or Small Wonder?
Small Wonder. There was a cuteness. There was a smart guy quality to it that I really...
And last one. Mike Fresh says, why haven't you yet acknowledged that Stanley Tucci is the greatest of all time?
Stanley Tucci is a scumbag. He's a horrible person. He ought to be ashamed of himself. Go watch his Instagram. I put a supercut out. He never knows when he's rolling, and he starts every reel turning to his wife going, are we rolling? He's dripping with a pump, and it disgusts me.
Oh my God. Okay. This was honestly one of my favorite interviews we've ever done. This is fantastic.
It's that low? The bar is that low?
It's pretty low now at this point. We've got a lot. We've got Jeff Jarrett we're recording with this morning, so it's only going to get lower.
Good luck.
Jeez.
I know.
I love those long pauses where just Memphis flashes before his eyes.
Oh my God.
That whole thing.
Oh, fuck. All right. Well, this was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you don't already follow RJ on Twitter, you're doing yourself a disservice. Please do. RJ City 1. And then on Instagram, RJ City, you can watch episodes of Hey EW every Sunday morning on YouTube at the crack of dawn. You can listen and follow this podcast, all of your favorite podcast platforms. New episodes Thursday, videos on YouTube on Mondays. And we've got, Dark Elevation on Monday. We've got Dark on Tuesday. We've got Dynamite Wednesday. We've got the Rampage Friday. We have so many shows I can't even keep track now. We're doing house shows now. It's awesome. It's great. And of course, this is my wonderful guest co-host, Alex Abrahantes. Thank you again for joining me. And thank you all for listening to AEW Unrestricted.